download the revision guides which accompany these videos, head over to www.mrbruff.com.
Hello everybody and welcome to this video on the importance of setting in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Everything you see in this video comes from my ebook, so follow the link in the description to pick up a copy. Well, if the aim of Shelley's novel is to scare the reader, then setting is often used to help achieve this aim, and there's no more obvious example than when Frankenstein brings the creature to life in chapter 5. Consider this passage that you can see in italics on the screen. It was on a dreary night of November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toils. With an anxiety that almost amounted to agony, I collected the instruments of life around me, that I might infuse a spark of being into that lifeless thing that lay at my feet. It was already 1 in the morning. The rain pattered dismally against the panes, and my candle was nearly burnt out, when, by the glimmer of the half-extinguished light, I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs. So you can see the bits I've highlighted in red are to do with setting, and what's happening here is Mary Shelley is using the setting to try and just create fear in the reader. So the first thing is, it was on a dreary night of November. 2 parts to this quote. Number 1, it's night. So things that are set at night are often scary. And number 2, it's November. So let's think about November. Well, November is a time of dark evenings and bleak, relentless weather. If this scene took place on a sunny August afternoon, it would have been totally different. So winter is a classic horror story setting. In fact, a lot of the novel Frankenstein takes place during winter. And in chapter 2, Robert Walton's own story begins in a winter that has been dreadfully severe. So Shelley sets the scary scenes in the most frightening season of winter. But why does it take place on a dreary night at, as we see here, 1 in the morning? You know, on the surface of it, this doesn't make sense. Here's a doctor, Dr. Frankenstein, sort of conducting a very serious scientific experiment, and he's doing it in the middle of the night. Well, late night settings, we think of them all the time, don't we, when we think of horror films and scary stories. They conjure up images in the reader's head of isolation and danger. So why is nighttime scary? Well, there's a few things. Number 1, everybody who could possibly help Frankenstein is obviously in bed asleep, and there's the isolation. But nighttime's also associated with fear, because at night we can't clearly see what's around us, and our mind plays tricks on us. We start to imagine things that aren't really there. Our sense of sight diminishes, so our other senses increase. So we hear strange noises we might not have heard before. So there's another thing used here, which is the use of weather to create a sense of fear. Shelley uses the literary device of pathetic fallacy, which is where we give human characteristics to weather. So because of this, the reader's on edge when reading "The rain pattered dismally against the panes." Now, the bad weather foreshadows the oncoming bad events, and in fact, the word dismally comes from the Latin dies mali, which means evil days. So by describing the weather as evil, it creates this tension in the reader that they're sure something bad is going to happen, and they're not wrong. So it's not just in chapter 5 that Shelley uses the setting of night to create fear. You know, you would wonder whether Victor's actually a vampire, because so much of the story takes place at night. In chapter 7, Frankenstein explains it was completely dark when I arrived in the environs of Geneva. So yeah, lots of stuff happens at night, and Victor puts it best himself in chapter 23 when he says, "I had been calm during the day, but so soon as night obscured the shapes of objects, 1,000 fears arose in my mind." The final way then that Shelley uses setting to create fear is through the geographical setting of the story. Now this is quite an interesting idea. This is my own original idea that just struck me. The book was written and the sort of major readership of the book would be here in the United Kingdom. Okay, so this is where Mary Shelley was from. The book was published, and the readers would be from too. And I think that the setting of the whole story is used to create fear. And I'll tell you why. You see, if you think about the different chronological setting of the story, it begins with Robert Walton stuck in ice around the North Pole. So, up sort of here somewhere. The North Pole, about 2,600 miles away from England. This then the story moves on to Victor, who was born in Naples, about 1,200 miles from England, maybe down sort of here. And then the story goes and develops again where Victor goes to university at Ingolstadt, just around here somewhere, about 600, 700 miles away from England. So I think what's happening, it's only a small point, it's certainly nothing you would probably write about in the exam, but I just think it's interesting, is that this story begins thousands of miles away from the reader, the English reader. But as the tale progresses, Victor comes to the UK to conduct research needed for the monster. And this sort of scariness that seems so distant at first has become closer and closer until it actually is in England. So it sort of jumps from here to here to here to here. And I just think that's one of the ways that setting is used, this ever closer kind of ominous presence with the creature. So the reader at home in England would probably start reading it and think, oh yeah, it's miles away, and then think, oh, it's getting closer, it's getting closer. And it's just one of those subconscious things that the writer did. Stay tuned for an advert about the ebook, and thanks for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Whether you're studying Frankenstein for GCSE, A-level, or even your degree, my new guide to the text is really worth buying. It's just £1.99 at mrbruff.com. You can also get the Kindle edition at Amazon. Follow the links in the description. And what are you going to get in this book? Well, first you'll get the complete original text from Mary Shelley, but then also I've written 40 pages of analysis. That's 12,000 words analysing the author, the context, the genre, importance of the title, setting, the characters, the use of language, structure, metaphor, imagery, the theme of fate, nature versus nurture, the role of women, religious imagery and metaphor, all sorts of topics. So please do follow the links in the description to pick up a copy, and it really will help you in your studies of this classic novel.